I want to just tee up a few questions and then let them take it from here to share what are they doing now and what's coming up, and how can, where are the key fights that we should know about and be in, that we have to win, and how can we help?
So I'm involved in 3 different groups. I founded the Young Turks, which we call the home of progressives. And so what we're trying to do is help all of you guys, all the different progressive groups, and especially groups trying to get money out of politics. So if you want to be involved in that, I just launched last week a volunteer army where we are going to correct the misinformation that is constantly spread both by people online but also corporate media. So whether you're in this room or out there, army@tytnetwork.com, and get involved in the fight that way. Another way to get involved is to actually come on our programs. So especially for those of you that are fighting on this critical issue, you could email Gina Kim at tytnetwork.com. She's here. Gina, if you could stand up so people can see you. She's in the back right there. So please talk to her and make sure that you join us on our program Rebel Headquarters so that we can amplify your voice and your message. So that's the Young Turks, and we've got, We the People with Nina Turner and all the other progressive programming that we have. So secondarily, real quick, I started the Justice Democrats, and they are part of this movement. They are part of they're the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, but most importantly, uncorrupted. They don't take corporate PAC money. And that is to put people into Congress that can make a difference, that are actually fighters and never got corrupted by the corporate money in the first place. So if you're out, again, whether you're in the room or out watching this at home, make sure that you get in the fight that way if that's what you want to support, candidates you want to support that don't take that corporate PAC money, justicedemocrats.com. But most importantly for this purpose, Wolfpack is the group that is trying to get money out of politics. We have been part of the amendment movement like Jeff has from the very, very beginning. And in the beginning, not everybody was with us on the amendment. Now I think we all recognize we absolutely need an amendment to go above the head of this insane Supreme Court. And I don't mind calling them insane, and we should call things as they are. Thank you. No one in their right mind believes a corporation is a human being. I have never had anyone raise their hand and say that. That's insane. You have to believe in insanity to believe in that. And so we fight back against that. And we believe that we should pursue every path, including an Article 5 convention. And that's why you're seeing this up on the screen. It's, or there you go, right there. So this is our new unity letter, and we're actually unveiling it right here, right now, for the first time ever. And so America Promise, We the People, Stampede, Progressive Change Campaign Committee, Take Back Our Republic, Represent Us, and so many others. Get money out of Maryland, GMOM in Maryland, amazing group that we have worked with. This is real unity. When we collaborate with the local groups, whether they're in Wyoming, whether they're in Massachusetts, Maryland, or anywhere in the country, where we get together and say we are going to fight through every available means to get that 28th Amendment. And I think it should be a cardinal rule for all of us that we don't fight against one another. I think that is a cardinal sin. And when we are blocking legislation that some other progressive group is doing, I think that's unacceptable. Apparently someone would like to fight the others in the room. Okay. But for the rest of us, please check out wolf-pack.com/unity and join us, sign this as well. And if you want to get involved through wolf-pack.com, that would be amazing. We're running a campaign in Maryland right now, and we're constantly, every legislation cycle, going through all the states. We've got 5 already. We've got to put another 29 up for a convention. And then the most important thing in the world, no matter how we get there, we have got to get 38 states to ratify. So get involved. Thank you, guys.
You've come off of some wins recently for the Fair Vote work. Would you tell us a little bit about Fair Vote, what the system would do to open up our political system, empower people, and what comes next for Fair Vote around the country? How can we collaborate? Who are you collaborating with? Where can we do it? And how can people help?
Sure. So yeah, there have been some great wins in the state of New Mexico in terms of my work, which is advocating for ranked choice voting. The city of Santa Fe implemented ranked choice voting for the first time this year in March for a municipal election. It went very well. We had a state law signed into law this year that in some ways enshrines ranked choice voting as an option for municipalities in New Mexico, and that has allowed for other cities to move on adopting ranked choice voting very quickly. Just this month, in the last month, the city of Las Cruces, which is the state's second largest city, adopted by a unanimous vote ranked choice voting. So things are looking good in New Mexico as far as the ranked choice voting work. Ranked choice voting is going to help us get to our goal of getting money out of politics and getting to a more representative democracy, because we get to elect people who actually are accountable to their constituents and who actually need to reach out to a broader base of people rather than just big bucks to get elected. And in the Santa Fe election that we just had, it was really interesting to see. In 2014, the election was so, there was so much PAC money involved in that and so much negative ads. And 4 years later, with ranked choice voting, the PACs didn't know what to do. They couldn't spend the money because the money is usually spent on negative ads, and that doesn't help your candidate with ranked choice voting. So we actually saw very little PAC money spent on that election, which was great. As far as the big picture, I work on the New Mexico effort, but Fair Vote works on a national level. So we're working with groups and interested individuals in most states right now. There's, there's great examples of big wins that are happening on the national level. We have the Maine example that we're, Maine just a couple weeks ago had their first primaries happening under ranked choice voting, and they will be electing their members of Congress and Senate moving forward using this method. The state of Utah, this is truly a nonpartisan, bipartisan reform. So on the more Republican side of life, the state of Utah this year just, both houses approved ranked choice voting as a possibility for their municipalities as well. And that is something that we think is gonna move to sort of like a Maine-like statewide method for Utah in the coming months, years. There's that possibility for New Mexico too, considering that law that was implemented recently, that was adopted recently. But more than anything, really, Fair Vote as an organization is committed to supporting local groups on the ground that are interested in moving ranked choice voting in their cities and their states, and relying on the understanding of the landscape from the local grassroots people who are doing the work. So rather than being prescriptive and saying, this is what we need you to do, is allowing for local groups to say, hey, we want to do this in our state. We understand what the landscape looks like. We need support, and then Fair Vote can offer support to your local groups. There's great momentum going on right now in Massachusetts, in Maine, in Utah. There's great work going on in Colorado, in New Mexico. The Bay Area and California in general has a lot of interest in ranked choice voting, a lot of groups working on that as well. What we're hoping to do is just provide technical assistance, provide support in terms of communications, in terms of, the Fair Vote has a great legal team that was very helpful to me in my work in New Mexico. These kind of supports would be available to local groups to help you get off the ground and help you achieve wins in your own state, in your own cities as well. So yeah, if you're interested in moving ranked choice voting in your place, just visit our website. It's fairvote.org, and you can connect with whoever's doing this work in your state, and then we can help you support those groups.
Great. Thanks, Maria. Excellent. So, Alex, would you share with us what are you doing now? They had a wonderful Unrigged Summit that brought us all together in New Orleans. What comes next? Where are the big fights? How can people plug in?
Sure.
Take it away.
Thanks, Jeff. For those of you who are not familiar with Represent Us, we are a national nonpartisan nonprofit. We focus on helping our members across the country pass anti-corruption acts, comprehensive anti-corruption acts at the city and state level. We are focused really on the city and state level because even though we're a national group, and I'm going to provide some national perspective from my point of view, we know that the localities are where it's at. That's why we're all here. That's where the power is built, and that's really what matters to start with, especially on such a big issue like this one. As Jeff mentioned, a lot of the focus right now for us is once a lot of the ballot measures, and we focus in a big way on ballot measures, have qualified for the ballot, we are working to help our members across the country, our hundreds of thousands of volunteers and chapter leaders, to plug into all of the available options. That way they can get involved this November and get involved and build an inclusive movement. So from a national perspective, I brought some numbers because I think numbers are real helpful, and I brought a crib sheet because I'm not so good with them. But I think that when I read these out, you'll see and feel what we're looking at for a new age of democracy reform. In 2012, we're just talking on the state level right now, there were 5 ballot measures that made the ballot in different states on democracy reform issues. That's money in politics, voting rights, voting process reform like ranked choice voting, gerrymandering, and more. In 2014, there were 9, 5 to 9. In 2016, there were 12. And in 2018, there are already 16 qualified, and it looks like 4 more are headed. That's really a movement on the rise, and 2 of those 20 have already won. Ohio passed gerrymander reform at 75%, and as Maria just mentioned, the Maine voters passed ranked choice voting for the first time ever used in the statewide ballot just a few weeks ago. Where I want to touch on the numbers, this is where it's really impressive, but I also want to use this opportunity to give a shout out to all of the groups out there in these different states that are passing these reforms, that are doing the hard work to put this on the ballot. So in Maine, when they passed ranked choice voting, they needed 61,000 signatures to fight the legislature and keep ranked choice voting back on the ballot. They collected 77,000 in just 90 days. In South Dakota and North Dakota, Represent Us chapters, Represent South Dakota collected 50,000 when they needed 27,000 signatures, and North Dakotans for Public Integrity collected 38,000 when they needed 27. There are 4 measures headed to the ballot through voter-collected signatures on gerrymandering. In Utah, Better Boundaries Utah needed 115,000, and they collected almost 200. In Ohio, the Fair Districts Equals Fair Elections Coalition collected a full 200,000 signatures, which forced the legislature to compromise and put this on the ballot so that they could take the vote to the people right in the June primary. That passed with 75% of the vote. In Missouri, where Clean Missouri is working on a gerrymandering, transparency, and lobbyist restrictions measure, they needed 160,000, and they blew it out of the water with 347,000 signatures collected. And anyone who's run these knows you always have to collect more. You don't need to collect twice as much. That shows power. And in Michigan, this is incredible. The Voters Not Politicians group, which is, of course, there are lots of groups working on each of these, and I'm calling out the ballot committee just to give some local flavor here. They needed 315,000, and a really, really volunteer impressive effort collected 425,000. Finally, in Florida, the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, which is collecting signatures to ensure that returning citizens who have served their time in the criminal justice system can vote. Florida is a huge state, needed 766,000. They collected and just turned in 1.1 million. And of course, you know about Massachusetts. The People Govern Not Money needed 65,000 for their first round and turned in 85,000. And they're buttoning it up for July 4th, right? To turn in those next 11. And then in Wyoming Promises preparing, collecting signatures for next year. So you put those all together, you think of over 2 million people have signed these signatures. You're going to allow tens and tens and tens of millions of people to vote directly on these important issues. And there's lots of problems with the ballot measure, but when we think about such an entrenched problem, this is really one of the most important ways to solve it. So I'm going to quickly run through the last thing that I want to focus on, and that's that this movement is building the big tent that's necessary to win. That's because it's post-partisan. When we see a state like Ohio, which is an intensely partisan state, split pretty 50-50, voting 75% to end gerrymandering, that's incredible. When we see all of these groups putting together and breaking down the silos that were previously in the reform community, it's not just money in politics, people working on money in politics, or ethics folks working on ethics or gerrymandering, we're all helping each other. That is incredible. And then the last thing, and I think where we can do a lot more work in terms of inclusivity, is making sure that for all of you that flew here, that decided and have been working on this, I assume money in politics is one of your primary issues, maybe not, maybe your first one. But there are a lot of people out there that care about other issues, whether they're criminal justice reform, the environment, subsidies, anything, and helping those folks see how spending 10% of their time on this issue is that's the way we're going to build this movement, so that we can collect the signatures necessary, we can build and bring everyone to the table and end up showing the politicians who are, in the end, we're going to need to pass the 28th Amendment, that the citizens care across everyone. If you're not wealthy, then you're affected by this issue. Thanks.
Rajan, what are you doing at End Citizens United, and who are you collaborating with? What are the key places we ought to be focused on? And I know our folks in Massachusetts and other places much appreciate the collaboration and the support you give to the grassroots campaigns as well. So tell us a bit more about that and about what comes next for you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And first of all, before I dive in, I want to thank the entire American Promise team and Jeff for your leadership on this issue, for being such an important convener of all of the organizations. The reason that there are so many folks who are involved with other groups who are here this weekend is because American Promise does such great work in bringing us together and keeping the 28th Amendment at the very center of the conversation about how we fix money in politics. So thank you again for all the work you do there. And End Citizens United, we're right in the thick of this fight as well. And we're attacking the money in politics problem from all different angles as we try together to get through this thorny, complex problem that manifests itself in so many different ways. We have 4 million members around the country who have come together, who have recognized that Citizens United, that Buckley, that McCutcheon, these other Supreme Court decisions that have been handed down are at the crux of this issue, and who also recognize that there are other important fixes that we need to make in the interim while we continue this fight with this multi-track approach. So we're going at it in several different ways. We work with elected officials to help them realize that they need to be passionate advocates on this issue, to get them in line with the rest of the country. And we've seen a phenomenal response already in just 3 years of existence, where folks like Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Kamala Harris have been stepping up and taking tangible steps to demonstrate their commitment to getting big money out of politics today and moving forward. We also work a great deal with candidates. There are so many folks running for Congress, for Senate, and even further down the ballot for statewide, state legislature, county commission, city council, you name it. But these folks are also figuring out ways to demonstrate their passion for this issue and that they understand its importance. And one of the big ways we've seen that manifest itself is in candidates taking the no corporate PAC commitment and guaranteeing that they will not take it as part of their campaigns. Not as a be-all or end-all, but as a symbol to every voter out there who takes this issue seriously, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, or something else, that they are going to be the candidate who's committed to fixing this issue. And so that's something we're very excited to see, a massive trend erupting. In 2016, I believe fewer than 10 candidates took that pledge nationwide. In this cycle, it's already, I believe, 140 at last count and going up every week. It's truly phenomenal to watch and a sign of the power of our movement. We also do a great deal of work on the ballot initiative level, working closely with partners like Represent Us, like American Promise, Voters' Right to Know, Common Cause, Take Back Our Republic, groups from across the political spectrum. We don't always agree on all of the issues, but we agree that money in politics is the crisis that must be confronted in large part before we can handle these other issues that are troubling our country. And so we're cooperating together on common sense reforms in states, counties, and cities around the country. Because we all understand that the way we can help create momentum for this change at the national level is by winning first in those states, counties, and cities. And so from places like Missouri, where the Clean Missouri Initiative is going to crack down on lobbyist gifts, clean up some campaign finance loopholes that have allowed big donors to spam out PACs that can exceed legal contribution limits. We're fighting there in a tough red state because this message, as we've seen so many times, resonates across political lines. We're fighting in Massachusetts to help push the 28th Amendment forward and to make Massachusetts the 20th state to adopt this call. And there are going to be so many more efforts like this in South Dakota, North Dakota, like Alex mentioned, in Arizona, in counties and cities across the country that are still working on getting these measures onto the ballot, that are still fundraising and gathering signatures and desperately looking for support. And so I hope everyone here will take a look when they go home and see what their state, county, and city is doing this year on this issue and find out how to get involved. Because ultimately, this fight is about the sum that every single one of us can bring to the table. We know what we're up against in this power of big money. We see it every single day. Every time we turn on the TV, every time we log online, there's more evidence about what these people are doing to corrupt and corrode our democracy. And we face so much, so many obstacles, but together we understand that it is possible to make a change. So thank you so much for everyone who's committed to go to Lobby Day tomorrow, for everyone who's committed to going home and making a change, and I hope you'll keep it up. Thank you so much for being here.